So lately I've been doing some mixes of live recordings of bands, and I just thought there might be some people out there that would find it interesting how I've set it up and some of the signal chains that I'm using for those channels. So I thought I'd just show you how I've got that all set up, and I'll go through the individual channels and what plugins I'm using and why. So this session I have here is a recording of the band Just Finished from the Asquith Bowling Club. These are all the different tracks that I'm using, and the audio is coming from these files here. Now these are 32 channel WAV files. You can process them in the way that breaks it out into individual WAV files and then place them on the channels, but I find it a lot quicker and easier to just use the 32 channel files directly and route them to all the channels this way. It saves a lot of time in processing. So if you look here on the kick trigger, for example, this is coming from track 1 source, and we're using mono source 1 into the track. And if we look at, say, the snare trigger, we're using mono source 2. If we look at, say, the overheads, we're using stereo source 7 and 8. So that comes in as a stereo channel. So for starters, we'll go through the drums and I'll show you what it sounds like without effects. And first we'll solo the overheads, and I'll bring up the effects chain. I've got a couple of different options here. So at the moment I'm just using a stereo imager to widen it, and then this parallel dynamic EQ just to give the cymbals a bit more bite, to pull out the body from the drums. But I do sometimes also use this mastering plugin. First I'll disable these plugins. So that's the raw overhead mics. The beauty about using something like this is if they're slightly unbalanced, you can just adjust them, and then the dynamic EQ just makes the cymbals sort of jump out a bit more. So you hear that's got a little bit more of the drum, that sort of like lower rumble of the drum sound. And it just tightens it up down here. Makes the cymbals pop a bit more. The other option is use this. That's what pulling all the foundation does. Same thing as the Nova, but I think we'll use the Nova for now. The other mics that I'm using live sound from are the kick and the snare. And some snare bottom. And then you'll hear if I bring in the trigger tracks, it gives it a lot more punch without sounding too artificial because it's blended in. And then for the toms, I actually am just using triggers for the toms. I'm not using the live mics for the toms because I find that having too many open mics can cause sort of like phasing interference. You get a much clearer sound directly from the overheads. So I'll show you what the toms sound like. I'll do it without the triggers. So that was all from the overhead there. So and if you hear the toms individually, and then we'll combine it all together. you just get that really good separation between the tones, the lower end tones of those toms from the triggers that you would never be able to get from the live mics. Now the signal chains that I'm using for the kick and snares, just using this AMEC 9099 channel strip. This is by far my favorite channel strip. It does 90% of the work needed for these channels, and I don't feel it's too necessary to, you know, stack too many different plugins for this kick and snare. It's doing the job I need. It's blended in with these anyway, so you'll notice on the snare trigger I've got a lot more of that gun sound on the plate reverb. I can get a much clearer sound from that trigger, whereas on the mic snare, it's a lot more dead. And the signal chain that I'm using for the triggers, a bit of a complicated one that I've sort of figured out with a little bit of trial and error. First, I'm using a EQ to boost the most prominent frequencies, the ones that are unique to that particular drum, because it'll make that drum stand out as opposed to other sounds. Then a transient boost and pull down as much of the resonance as possible. Gate, just to get a clear trigger sound. Comp, to sort of keep the signal under control, because boosting these transients can make the dynamics go a bit crazy. And then I use this to convert to the MIDI channel, to the MIDI note. Set a threshold, set the note. That's pretty much all you need. And then this one helps you shape the velocity of the MIDI. So I can add a little bit of boost, I can set a minimum max, and I can change the dynamic multiplier. So this plugin needs a lot of fine tuning to try and get the sweet spot. Most of the time, the only thing that I need to adjust is this input gain. Depending on who is playing or how the kit is mic'd up, I just adjust this gain until I'm getting the right sort of triggers that I need. Okay, so next we'll go have a look at the bass. What I have running for the bass here, I've just got an EQ to sort of shape the sound before going into the Helix Native. And I'm using the Helix Native to do all the processing here. So I got input comp, output and multiband to tighten up the bass, a little bit of EQ just to shape the tone a bit, and then we're doing parallel DI and amp sim with dual cabs. And so what I would usually do is just adjust this routing, whether we want more amp, more DI sound. So this is your DI, and we can adjust that as required. That is the amp. And I found the sweet spot to be around about there. And then I've got this EQ before it, which is just doing a little bit of shaping to to compensate for how the instrument's being played. Okay, next we'll have a look at the electric guitar and what I am doing there. So for starters, we're using the Ozone EQ to shape the tone coming in. Now, this one is set up as dual left and right with completely different curves, and that is because this is two microphones on the same cab. And so I've got this mic and this mic EQ'd differently to sort of help them match. Then that's just running into a gate. Gate's just to remove a bit of background noise from the stage. It's not being used as a hard gate like you would with metal guitar. Long hold on it, sort of fades out slowly. And then comp using 1176, about 5 dB, 5 to 7, something like that. And then this Neuron 4 plugin, which adds a little bit of secret sauce, adds some width and punch to the sound. So this is basically just sort of a low-end boost, but maybe it's a compressed low end. It works quite well. And then width just brings a lot of life. So it sounds very so this is probably using some comb filtering or something, but it works well, so I use it. And then it also applies a bit of a tone match to like an ideal electric guitar sound. It's okay, I guess, but you don't need that, because you can adjust your own tone here. See, mine seems to be pretty close as is, so. And then just a little bit of room reverb to make it sound a bit more natural and blend in with the live nature of the recording. Okay, next we'll look at the acoustic guitar. With the acoustic guitar, I've got something a bit special going on here. Yes, just a gate, EQ. You can see I'm doing quite a bit of shaping here, pulling out the body, boosting a lot of the high-end tone. And that is because I'm compensating for this IR that I've created. So this is a mix of several different IRs that I've gotten, and they're an IR of an acoustic guitar recorded with a microphone. So in the same way you would have an IR of a speaker in a cabinet, basically modeling the tone of the wood on the guitar. So I'll show you the difference. We'll leave these two enabled, right? I'll disable that IR. So that's basically the raw acoustic tone. I'll take the EQ out, and then we will turn on this IR. You can see it's a lot more warmer now. So I've got this EQ to compensate. You can see the difference. It sounds like this is clearly a piezo microphone in an acoustic. then it sounds like you're listening to a real acoustic guitar in a room. And then I've just got a little bit more, multi-band comp, studio comp, and a bit of room reverb. And then to top it off, I've also got the Neuron on this one, just to give it a bit more life. So that is the acoustic guitar. Next we'll look at the keys. Keys you don't really need to do much because you're basically going to run them all flat anyway. But one of the things I do use is this parallel dynamic EQ. And so what this does is each one of these channels is its own compressor, and then adjusting the gain gives you the EQ curve. And then there's a wideband comp as well. So basically this yellow curve is your EQ curve and the blue one is your compressor curve. So having these parallel compressors just allows to tame certain frequencies that might spike or stick out a bit more. You can tighten up the low end so it doesn't go out of control or compete with the bass. It works quite well. And I've got this this gain plugin before it, just so that I can adjust the input gain before the comp for certain songs that are just too loud. So for example, down here you can see I've got this song, I've pulled it out by about 11 dB. You can see that if I had that at full, it just overtakes all the other instruments. So I pulled it back a bit, help it blend in better. So I don't generally need to do that much, as a lot of the leveling will come from the Nova, just to keep everything consistent. But every now and again need to make adjustments, boost things, cut things as required. Next we'll have a look at the vocals. So what I'm using here is the AMEC 9099. As I think I might have mentioned it before, I love the expander on this. It's really, it just works really well to reduce as much of the background noise as possible. Do a little bit of shaping with the EQ and set the comp mainly to get the levels correct. But a lot of the EQs done here later to adjust the tone to the mix. So you'll see I've got the gain set in such a way that when they sing, it's just over the edge of the threshold for the expander and just about the edge of the threshold for the comp. I've got the comp at -8 and the expander at -12. So we just need to adjust the input gain where we're not having too much compression. And if we go too high, the expander's going to be open all the time. And if we go too quiet, can't quite get over the edge of that expander.
Do you want to be in my shoes? We can get together.
So we just adjust the input gain, get that in the right sweet spot. Adjust the tone with the EQ. Now, most of this EQ I will actually do with the full band. I'll just boost that channel a bit so I can hear it, and then I'll do my EQ adjustments, because you really need to hear it with the rest of the band. You can't do it in solo mode. Then compressor with the de-esser, not that complicated, aiming around about 6 to 9 dB, I guess. And then this is another bit of a secret sauce plugin, much like the Neuron. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure exactly what this one does, but it does give a bit of life. And it works, so I use it. Then just a little bit of room reverb to tie everything together. So I'll show you what I've done with the BVs as well. So we've got 3 BVs besides the lead vocals, so one on the drums and stage left and right. It's a same sort of setup as the main vocal, but you'll notice I've got these very harsh high and low pass filters on the EQ. This is to remove as much as the excess stage noise as possible, especially with the drum BVs. You can hear a lot of that, and it makes a big difference. And then I poke out the frequency that will make that voice heard the most, because we're really trying to highlight the singing and reduce the stage noise. Because if I just show you with all of the effects turned off, and I'll even mute those.
Well, baby, there's just one thing. Whenever you come
There's a lot of the
baby,
stage in there.
No, I wouldn't get you down. I just like talking to you. Baby, we can get together. We can get together. Maybe sometime.
So I'm trying to highlight those vocal tones as much as possible there. The expanders on the BVs are really high. As you can see here, this is higher than the comp, so it's going to be compressing even before it's over the threshold for the expander. So I'll show you how that works with the drum vocals. If I have this soloed here and just remove the EQ, see there's a very wide sort of drum sound there. Narrows it down, boosts the vocal tone. And you can see the expander is pulling down as soon as possible, even though we're still getting a lot of the drum sound through. But we don't want to sound it like it's cutting it off entirely. That would be noticeable. We're just trying to reduce background noise as much as possible. And then for the vocal effects, I'm just using this, which is just a mix of everything. Different delays, different reverbs. Okay, next I'll show you what we're doing with the crowd mics, because I've got some interesting routing going on here. So if you look at the routing for these crowd mics, I'm taking audio from, this is the BV stage left. It doesn't sing much or talk in between songs, so I'm using it as a crowd mic. And then the other one is number 13. That's actually the conga mic. But then I've got these sends from the mix buses of drums, instruments, vocals. These are going to channel 2 of the channel, whereas the audio is going to channel 1. And I'll show you why that is the case. So up here in the routing, you'll see I've got track 1. So this is your inputs. This is the plug-in audio, and then this is the track output. But track channel 2 is going to the auxiliary input, and the auxiliary input is used here as your external key. So the external key is used to control the gate and the compressor from the key audio, but then applies it to the main stereo left and right audio. I'll solo this. So what we're listening to now is the crowd mics. As you can see, the expander is 100%. It's taking 100 dB out of the audio. But then as soon as the band stops playing and it gets below this threshold again, the crowd noise comes up, the expander is released, and you can hear the audio again. So if we listen to that with the band, I've got the crowd noise up, but we're not hearing any of it because it's being expanded out. And then it opens up and you can hear the clapping in the background. And that's how you get that room feel without adding a whole bunch of extra room noise or reverb or phase issues. The last thing to look at is what we're doing on the master. So basically just a smooth mastering compressor into a multiband, and then the limiter with some just EQ shaping and a little bit of a imager boost. So it's just our mastering EQ. Multiband tightens everything up a bit. Limiter boosts the volume. Just create a bit more width. Shape the EQ. And that is how we get our final mix at the end. So I don't do any mastering afterwards. I just export it as is with these turned on, but while I'm mixing, I'll have these turned off. Another thing worth mentioning actually is I've got same sort of mastering compressor. I've got it on each of the buses. It's not doing a lot. There are slightly different controls on each one, but this is mainly just to make sure that I've got the levels in the correct ballpark. Okay, the only other thing that might be worth mentioning is, as you can see, I've got some automation over here for the first couple of sets that I have already done. This is a mute automation for the vocal effects. So in between each song, I'll pull out the vocal effects so you don't get this big echo sound as they're talking to the crowd. And then these are adjustments that I have done to the keyboard gain, just when there was a bit loud or a bit quiet in certain parts. Sort of after I've got each channel sounding how I want it to sound, I'll do slight adjustments to the mix to make sure that everything is balanced correctly, and then probably go back to a lot of the EQs and do fine-tuning adjustments to the EQs to just make everything sit together a bit better. So yeah, that's how I've been doing the mixes for these recordings. If you have any technical questions, sure, let me know, and I'll probably try and do a video explaining how I do the editing for the video recordings as well. So cheers.